Hi there, my name's Simon Drew, and I'd like to welcome you to the Practical Stoic Podcast, where I give you practical Stoic advice for modern times. If you'd like to learn more about Stoicism, or if you want some added inspiration in your day, just go to my website. It's risetothegoodlife.com. If you're interested in transforming your life with Stoic principles, then I also offer one-on-one coaching. To book your first free session, just head to risetothegoodlife.com/coaching and follow the links. But for now, enjoy this episode. Hi there, my name's Simon Drew, and welcome to the Practical Stoic Podcast. And in today's episode, we've got a very special guest, a good friend, and I'm really excited to have him on the show today, Danny Vega. And many of you will actually know Danny because you've come across to this podcast via the Ketogenic Athlete podcast and the Keto Evangelist community. So if any of you are listening, then I'm sure that you'll know Danny. He's such a great guy, and I'll tell you all a little bit about him for those of you who don't know him. So Danny is a native of Miami, Florida, and he received his bachelor's degree in political science from Columbia University in 2004, where he was a member of the football team and a 3-time Dean's List recipient. Danny earned his Master's of Science in Human Performance from the University of Florida, where he worked with the National Championship men's basketball team, along with the women's basketball, tennis, and golf programs. He then went on to become the Strength and Conditioning Coordinator for VCU Basketball, helping the Rams to get to the 2007 Conference Championships and making it to the second round of the NCAA tournament. So, overall, Danny is just a badass person. I'm so excited to talk to him, and I know that he's going to share so much wisdom with you guys because he also implements Stoicism into everything that he does in his life, whether it's with his family or with his strength and conditioning. You know, he's just got so much knowledge and a real passion for Stoicism. So I'm excited to get into this interview. So without any further ado, I present to you Danny Vega. All right, so Danny, you know, I've been so excited to have you on the show because, for many reasons. Firstly, because ever since the start, when I actually started this podcast, we actually have been in contact because you've actually had the Kid Evangelist community on your side, and you've sort of let them know about the Stoic podcast that I've put together. And since you emailed me that first time, I had a feeling that we would be in contact many more times after that. We'd be working together on all sorts of levels. It's very exciting. And you know, I know that so many people in my community have come across to the Stoic side of things because of the awareness that you're putting out in your community and the Kid Evangelists. So I've told everyone a little bit about you. So now I want to give you a chance. Why don't you tell everybody in the podcast who you are, what you do, and why you do it?
So, of course, my name's Danny Vega. I am by no means a Stoic by nature. I'm a very passionate person. So it's been a very interesting and fun challenge to apply a lot of these principles in my life. I personally, so I grew up in Miami, and grew up in a family of Cuban people. And there's a Facebook group called "We're Not Yelling, We're Cuban," which is interesting. It just goes to show like how we are and the type of people we are. So I grew up in Miami, played football, played college football in New York, and then got my master's at the University of Florida in strength and conditioning. So basically the master's was a master's in human performance, which is physiology and kinesiology. And I was the head strength coach for a college basketball team in Virginia, and always been into health. And I got away from it about 10 years ago when I got into pharmaceutical sales, and then I went on to medical device sales. And it's interesting because when I started this ketogenic diet on I remember the day, it's June the 12th, 2016. And when I started that, I just started just learning so much about the diet, and it was a little bit different than anything else I had ever done as far as what it meant to me and what it meant to my life, because all these things started happening because, most people come to the diet to lose weight or to do something else, mostly to lose weight. But what you get is so much more. And so I found my brain was working better. My productivity was up. And so I just started to just get involved with it, And because of that, I met Brian, and we started doing Keto Evangelist or the Ketogenic Athlete podcast that we still do. And now, obviously, just very, very active on social media talking about this stuff. I'm always learning more. I speak, we have KetoCon. I spoke at that last year, and I'll be speaking again this year. But it's like with this diet, this lifestyle, I love the culture of it, I guess you can say, because it's more holistic and it's more about health, which I think it's a very healthy fad, if you want to call it a fad, for people to be looking at their blood values of their blood sugar, their insulin, and focusing on way more than just losing 20 pounds or getting stronger. Obviously, you get all of that other stuff too, but you get so much more. So it's definitely my passion. I love helping people. I love to see people, turn things around. I love a really good comeback story, whether it be someone who was addicted to drugs and they came away from that. I know a lot of people close to me that are that had addiction and that have gone through the programs and gotten better. And honestly, I think that if the world was full of a bunch of recovering addicts, it'd probably be much better because it causes you to do all this introspection and all this examining that a lot of us just never do. And it's the same thing with diet. I see people turning things around, and I have a personal connection to it because, for instance, I've had my wife's grandmother and her great aunt both passed away from similar complications that are related to dementia. And, that is insulin resistance of the brain. That is, the brain is not able to process glucose like before, and that's related to diet. And then my uncle passed away about 4 months ago at 66 years old from dementia. And so, this type of diet, and it's frustrating for me. It's very frustrating because all of these things could be prevented. And so, like, we really use our platform to try to educate more people so that more people don't need to get sick for no reason and die for no reason. So that's pretty much what drives me.
Mm. No, that's awesome. And I want to touch on a lot of that definitely in this interview, because something that's interesting that's come about of me doing these interviews with people is, people are starting to realize that, okay, you come in and you start learning about Stoic philosophy. It's not just about philosophy. It's about what you eat. It's about how you live. It's about your exercise. It's about every aspect of your life. And so, we've already had discussions with people, for example, Kai Whiting, who was a big advocate for, like a more vegan lifestyle because of the ethical implications. And then, but I want to give people not just ideas for how they can implement philosophy into their life, but how they can make everything that they do a philosophy. So even everything that they're eating, thinking about it and thinking about how it's going to impact your health. So I'd really like to talk about that in this interview. Absolutely. And oh my gosh, there's so many interesting things that you said there in that one, in that one, I don't even know what to call that. What was that? A spiel?
Introduction?
It was an introduction. Yeah, I haven't. Sorry. Let's start this again, and I'll learn how to speak first. So, when were you actually first introduced to Stoicism?
So, believe it or not, it was last June, July timeframe. So it's only been like 9, 10 months. And we're going to go into first world problems territory now. Okay. So please bear with me with my spoiled first world self. I'm fully aware that my life is pretty darn awesome, but it's kind of absurd. And luckily I have a good explanation for why I was the way I was. So I had some difficulties with my job. There was some issues going on at work, and then at the same time I was doing this. I decided that I wanted to cut down to 6% body fat. That was just a goal that I wanted to do. And it's funny because nowadays I would never focus so much on that goal like I did last year. I would be more focusing on the process like I do nowadays. But I grew up being a goal-oriented person. I've realized as I've gotten older that it's just not optimal. It's better for your mental health. It's better just even for the outcome for you to be focused on the process. But at the time I was really focused on the goal. So I had stuff going on at work, and then I was also getting towards the latter months of this cut. And as you go through like a cut where you're cutting down to body fat levels that are just under 10% and that are not really normal for the everyday person to walk around at, you get moody and things like that. And luckily, in my defense, my friend Robert, who is the person who actually introduced me by this book that he recommended to Stoicism, he said, look, the mental games are so much more, they're just more intense when you're doing something like bodybuilding, because it's totally voluntary. You know, if you are at war or if you had someone die, you are faced with these, you know, these things that are just like, they're terrible. If you're bodybuilding, you're getting ready for like a bodybuilding competition. This is all your choice, you know. So it's so much harder to 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 really stay focused and do something like that when you realize that it's all your choice. Like, you really don't have to do this, you know. Like, so you get those games and they go over and over. Like, this is really, why are you doing this? This is not necessary. This is in the grand scheme of things. And so he said that, and then he said, but then at the same time, when you do things like that that are voluntary and you put yourself through that and no one else is making you do it, that's where a lot of growth happens. And he's like, have you ever heard of The Obstacle Is the Way? And I said, no, but I've heard you mention it a ton of times. Like, he listens to it during his bodybuilding prep, like at the end of his bodybuilding preps. And mind you, I've never been a bodybuilder. Like, I've always played sports. I've always been on the performance side of things, you know, but this period, I wanted to do that type of thing. I wanted to see what it's like to put myself through that. And he listens to it on repeat. He'll listen to it while he's training. And so I was like, okay, I'll listen to it. And obviously, you know the book, you know Ryan Holiday, you had him on the show. And he was talking about all these historical examples of people who have practiced Stoic principles when faced with big challenges. And I think I was actually saying this the other day on my Instagram story, that I think that The Obstacles Away is a really, really good book to start with Stoicism, because as you go later on and you dig deeper into Stoicism, you learn about, Epictetus talked about how we should look at modern um, examples of philosophers and how they live that philosophy in their lives. And I think that that's a really good way to kind of see it, because it's such a practical philosophy, you know? That's why this is such a good name for your podcast, is the Practical Stoic. It really is such a practical philosophy. And so, like, I saw all these people, you know, Teddy Roosevelt, Obama, all the different examples that he gave. And then I was like, who's this Marcus Aurelius guy? This guy, you know, he was the one who really, like, every time he quoted him, I was like, I need to listen to this guy. And so I was telling you before we got on the air that, you know, I listen to a lot of my books because I barely have time to sit down. So I listen to, and I forget who the narrator is, but he's amazing. And so the narrator of the Marcus Aurelius meditations that I listened to, it was just awesome. And it was just kind of like he said it with so much emotion that it really made me feel like Marcus Aurelius was talking to himself. And like, because he's like, and why does it matter? Does it really matter to you? You know, like, you know, why is it that, you know, why aren't you working right now? Like, seriously, like you should be doing your job. You should be doing what you're supposed to do, and you still don't. You know why? And I'm like thinking to myself, like, this is amazing. It's like I'm really seeing what this guy's inner dialogue is, you know. And so, of course, I listened to him next, and then I listened to Seneca's letters, and it was from the Tim Ferriss version that with that narrator. And then after that, I listened to Ego is the Enemy. And then from there, I've read a lot of Epictetus' stuff, nothing in full, but and then there's a few other Stoic texts that I've there was a William you mentioned it, and I was like on your podcast, I was like I was like, I think it's the art of
yeah, the art of
it's not.
yeah, William B. Irvin. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
that's a really good one, but and I wasn't prepared for that one because that one's kind of like a textbook as well. It's
yeah.
kind of like it's which is good because it's like it's teaching you all about it. But so that's how I got into Stoicism, and honestly, it's one of those things because I'm really happy that people are getting into it because everybody's like tagging me, like, look, I got the Daily Stoic, and look, and I'm like, this is awesome. I'm like, but guys, you gotta keep going, you know, because it's like it's way more than just a really nice pop culture quote thing to start your day. Like, you really gotta practice Stoicism. I think it's important to like read every day, just a little bit, whether I know that Tim Ferriss's thing is like he'll read or he'll listen to like a chapter or something of Seneca like every day or something. And because we are so quick to just go back into our old ways, you know. And so for me, it's been one of those things where obviously I'm the type of person that when I like something, I let everybody know about it and I get obsessive about it. And so that's kind of what I've, for Stoicism, it's especially when I find something that's just so effective. And like I've said on your Facebook group, it's improved my relationship so much. It's improved my relationship with my sons. And it's helped my wife and I be honest with each other in a non-violent way, I guess, like in a non-violent communication kind of way, like where we can call each other out, but it's not it's not going to lead to issues. Like it still hurts, when she tells me like you're really self-absorbed, like you really are, and I'm just like, I know it's really bad because I'm generous, but so I do everything for my family. Everything is about them. Like I'll do everything for them, but it's kind of like I'm on this journey and they're along on my journey, where so it's like it's Danny's world and Danny's, I'm the provider and I'm the dad and I'm this, but it's like this huge world of mine where they are in my world and I'm trying to make it more about our world.
Hmm.
So that's kind of like one of my biggest things is one of what I'm working on right now.
But yeah, I want to keep on going with this because I was going to get to this later in the interview. Like I know that you are a massive family man. Everybody who listens to your podcast will definitely know that. Uh, how else has Stoicism kind of like what are the changes that you've seen since you've started practicing Stoicism in with your relationship with your kids and your wife? Like you've already just mentioned a couple, but are there any others?
Well, as far as with them or with other people or just in general.
Well, I mean, you could go in general, but I'm particularly interested in the family side of things because I know that a lot of people
Yeah,
who
yeah,
listen
yeah.
to this will be family people, and so they're wondering, this Wednesday podcast. Well, it's going to be tomorrow, but when we release this, it will have been on Wednesday. But
Yeah, 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 yeah.
it was all about how Stoicism has made you a better parent, and so maybe you could also touch on that for the family people out there.
Oh yeah. Okay. So I'm going to try to condense our philosophy as much as possible because I think it's relevant. But we are very much like this was before Stoicism, so it went very well with it. Peaceful parents, very much about our children being free and our children having as much autonomy as possible. We really do feel like parents, the best thing that we can do is get out of their way as much as possible, and just let them be themselves. Our two biggest goals are for our kids. I know you liked it when I told you is like that we want our children to know who they are and we want them to know what they love. And like I say those two things because it's like you ask a kid, it's sad, you ask a kid nowadays, who are you? Like what defines you? Like who are you? It's hard for a kid to to say that even at 16, 17, 18 years old because they really haven't had the time to spend on themselves to think about that. And I think that's so important, like why do we have to wait until we're like, for me, I probably started to really, really see who I was right around the age of 28, 29, when I had a bad breakup and a few months of just going out all the time and trying to bring people home all the time and being afraid to have an empty bed. And then I forced myself to be alone and it was uncomfortable. But I grew so much and I realized that the person that I was at 28 was way different than the person that I was at like 20, but I still had this image of myself as that older person. And I had to realize that I'm darker, I'm smarter, I have a lot of good things, but there's a lot of, things that are, of course, that come with experience. And so why not have my kid know that from an early age? And then, of course, what do you love? It's really hard, especially here in the States where, there's all this standardized testing and they're spending so much time being judged on the students they are and being told, and you go to the A school because you got, the best scores and then we put you here. And so I'm lucky that we can kind of do what we're doing, which is basically unschooling. So we don't do really homeschool because, in our opinion, that kind of assumes that you're going to replicate what's being done at school in the home. Also, because we're never home. My wife says that if the kids were home, half the time the house would probably, burn down. So they're always doing some sort of activity. But like, so part of that philosophy is to always be honest with our kids, and to always, if they ask us something, we're going to be upfront with them, whether it's about conception, where it's about, anything, out of the ordinary that they're trying to figure out for the first time. We want to be the ones so that they can trust us, because we want them to turn to us when it matters, when they're older. And so one of the things that I've done is very clearly, I explained to Desmond, my 7-year-old, because my 3-year-old Dean, he really can't understand a lot of concepts right now. His brain is just not at that point. So, but with Desmond, I can say to him, look, I'm going to explain what memento mori means to you, and memento mori, just think of it this way. Back in the day, people used to die a lot more. They used to die from diseases. They used to be like much more normal to die. So there was death everywhere. And so nowadays we feel like we live in a sterile world where there is war, but it's kind of like, it's kind of insulated in certain places. There's not a lot of places that are living in war. Unfortunately, there still are, but for in the Western world, you don't really see it a lot. And so people kind of, that messes them up, and back in the day, people used to think about this thing. It was called memento mori, which basically means remember that you have to die. And they would practice, like on purpose, thinking about that they may die today, and I was like, and remember that this doesn't mean if you're going to die today, you're going to eat all the ice cream in the world. It's about, and for him, that he has such a young mind, I wanted him to realize that how important it really is to strive for virtue, from an early age, for him to really strive for virtue, and for him to really know what integrity means. And so I said, if I just tell him, like, from my experience, if I think I'm gonna die today, I'm gonna spend all my time with you guys. I'm gonna just like enjoy my family the most that I can. I'm gonna try to be the best version of myself. I really want to just leave the best legacy that I can. And so I go, and this is like after a fight originally, when I originally told him about this, and I said, look, it was this dumb toy that they got, like, I think it was like McDonald's or something, because back in the day, they would want the McDonald's toys. And so my wife would get them like burger patties without buns, because, we don't eat any of the carbs. And then she would buy the toy because they sell the toys. Well, she doesn't do that anymore, because sometimes they only have one toy of one kind, and then there's another toy, and all of a sudden now this one wants the other toy, so they'll get fight. So I said, so listen, so think about it this way. If you or your brother are going to die tomorrow, one of you is going to die, this is your last day with them, do you really want to spend your day fighting over a stupid toy? Really? And then and it really just helped him get that perspective. And so that's one thing that I've shared with him. Now there's two more that I think are really important, and the first one is that I kind of give him this he needs to understand his responsibility as the older brother. It's the cross that I had to bear, and it's the cross that he has to bear. He was chosen. I said, you were chosen to be the older brother, because the person that you are is fit to be an older brother. Your brother is not fit to be an older brother. He's fit to be a younger brother. That's who he's supposed to be. And so that's what he has, his own responsibilities, and you have your own responsibilities. And so what that means is it's going to be hard, because you're going to have to bite your tongue more. You're going to have to not retaliate when he hits you. And I say to him, I know it sounds like it's not fair if he hits you, but first of all, you're twice his age and twice his size. So when you hit him, you're going to really hurt him. And second of all, when you hit him, you're teaching him that violence solves problems. So I'm relying on you. I'm counting on you to be an example for your brother and show him that we don't solve problems with violence. So that's kind of another thing. And then the last one was what you and I were talking about right before the air, where you and Donald Robertson covered it in depth, and it was awesome, talking about because my youngest really is intense. He really is. There's times when all three of us are just really struggling because he's making our lives very difficult, And so I'm like, I told Desmond, I said, buddy, I want you from now on, because he just started sparring in mixed martial arts. So I said, I want you to look at it when you do your sparring and you get hit. Do you get angry at your sparring partner? And he's like, no. And I'm like, okay, so what happens if you got hit by your sparring partner? There's obviously like there's something going on, right? And he's like, well, yeah, I didn't have my hands up, and so your partner's there to make you better, right? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, well, that's what your brother's here to do. He's here to make you better. He's here to challenge you. And so when you do that and we talk about it over and over, we're at the point now where he's repeating it a lot to me. He may not be reacting in the best way, but I mean, I give him a lot of credit because, as a 7-year-old, he really does 7, 8 times out of 10, he really does practice restraint, and he'll say, like, especially after let's say I just talked with him about it yesterday, he'll say today, he'll say, he's making me better. I know that he's making me better. And he put 2 and 2 together to extend that into other areas of life. And you saw kind of like I posted about it on Friday,
Yeah, tell
because
that
we had
example.
a
I
date
love
night
that.
and the gym was that was like I it's hard not to be like a bragging parent, because like when you get, it's just hard, like you don't want to do it, but you just always do it, it's just like, it's really hard. So I was like, because when he told me that, I was like, hold on, come over here, tell your mother what you just told me. So he's like, puppy, I got really good news. I was like, oh, okay. He's like, 2 pieces of good news. He's like, well, I jammed my finger, which means I'm going to get stronger. And second of all, the lightsaber class was like out of this world. And I was like, who are you? Like, like he's like telling me that he's going to get stronger because because he jammed his finger, it's hilarious, man.
Mm. I love that. I think that's such a great sign of a kid who is so much more mature than his age, on average. Like that's just really, really awesome. Yeah, so I mean, I really loved what you were saying there, and I love that you're bringing philosophy into your kids' lives. I think that's so important. One of the best things about Stoic philosophy for me is they really do encourage everybody, no matter how old or how young, to be studying philosophy and to be implementing it into their life. And I also think that it's so important for kids to know who they are as soon as they can. I mean, I always go to this example that Jim Rohn shared, which is one of my favorites. And he was saying, when an antelope is born, it immediately knows who it is. Its mum tells it, you're an antelope. You need to get up and walk as soon as possible. Otherwise, you're going to get eaten by the lion. That's the facts of life. So what does it do? It takes no time. It gets up as soon as it possibly can, and it's running within the first hour of its life. It knows who it is, where it's going. And then you look at kids in the human species, and we're given like 20 years, and even then we don't even know who we are. Like how crazy
Yeah.
is that it takes so long for us to really get a grasp of who we are and what life is and how to live it. So I just want to tell everybody that this is so important. If you have kids, this is such a great principle to teach them. Who are you? What do you love? Be sharing these Stoic principles. Don't feel like there is any topic that is out of bounds to talk about with your kids, especially when it comes to things that could be helping them to live a better life. So I love that you've just talked about all that. And I want to talk about the kid evangelist side of things just for a moment as well, because as I said, look, this isn't a nutritional podcast, or I don't know, that sounds like you're eating the podcast. It's not a nutrition podcast, but these philosophies, they do go over into every single area of your life. And, I would like for people who haven't heard about the ketogenic diet before to get a chance to hear from you what it's all about, what's involved, and maybe if there's anywhere that they can go to find more information about it. And also, just before you get into that, if somewhere in your your introduction to introduction to ketogenic diet here, you could also mention why you think so many people are sort of pairing it up with Stoic philosophy in your community.
So, first, I'll say that before I get into like the details of the diet, one of my biggest issues, and it's kind of like this problem that I'm trying to solve. It's like this puzzle that I'm trying to solve is like what separates the people who who follow through and are able to commit to a diet and commit to an exercise program. What separates them from all the other people? Because nowadays we have so much information. Like we can literally look at the exact blueprint for what made so and so explosive, so powerful. If it's an athlete, so successful. If it's like a CEO, we have all that information. It's like we do not have a lack of information. So one of the most interesting things to me, and one of my biggest goals is to try to see how we get from that knowledge. And I'll give you an example. Like someone who comes up to me and says, and on my Instagram, hey, you inspire me so much. You know, it's nothing personal against them, but for me, I'm like, I don't want to be an inspiration. I want you to be like, because of what I learned and something that you taught me, I lost 50 pounds. I reversed my diabetes. I appreciate being a source of inspiration, but like I think that inspiration is one of those things where it's like it makes you feel good, but you don't really do something with it. And so I've found that with this diet, first of all, it makes it much easier to follow through with things because from a hormonal standpoint, you know, we've been told that we need to lower our calories and move more. As we eat less, move more. And so unfortunately, a lot of people who have eaten the standard Western diet, which is really high sugar, and it's even high fat as well, but it's high sugar, it's low protein. These people they try to go on a diet and they restrict their calories, and then the research bears it out pretty clearly that if only 8 weeks on a really low calorie diet, you can mess up your hunger signals for over a year. So one of the things they measure is hunger hormones, and ghrelin is your hunger hormone, and then you have leptin, which is your satiety hormone. So if you have your leptin and your ghrelin are in check, you're full when you're supposed to be full, and you're hungry when you're supposed to be hungry. But unfortunately, because of what we put into our bodies, it just throws us out of whack, And then we pair that with the fact that we are very, very, in this instant culture where we want to do things so quickly and we want quick results. Well, if you lower your calories a lot, you're going to see quick results. A lot of people, they'll go on a crash diet and they'll lose a bunch of weight. But unfortunately, because of what they're doing to their metabolism, first of all, which their metabolism is like, okay, let's slow things down to a crawl because we need to slow our resting metabolic rate because we don't know when we're going to get our next meal, and we don't know how much it's going to be. And then the next thing is, of course, the hunger hormones. That's why your typical low calorie diet doesn't work, because over time people gain weight back for those two reasons. So now you have something like the ketogenic diet, which is pretty much in line with biology, anthropology, physiology, all of the things that you look at. It's just so natural. It's a natural way of eating and then you start to see, I don't know if you know this, but I was doing some research recently on epilepsy, and I was reading because we have this book club on the Keto Evangelist Unlimited, and one of the chapters is neurodegenerative diseases, and we're looking at epilepsy, and Hippocrates, all that time ago, was one of the first people to suggest fasting to treat epilepsy. And we're talking about thousands of years ago. And so when we eat, this whole thing about we need to eat frequently, it's only relevant if you eat like a higher carb diet. So like a ketogenic diet is basically, it's called ketogenic because Genic means like liking. So basically, like it's a diet that promotes keto, so promotes ketones. So your typical diet is you know your typical person, their insulin levels are going to be at a certain level, which is a little bit more elevated than they should be, and their blood sugar is going to be a little bit higher than it should be because of all the carbohydrate that we eat. In the absence of carbohydrate, what happens is your insulin levels drop, your blood sugar drops, and your body starts to create these. It's an alternative fuel source, which I would say it's a more primal fuel source. It's not this thing that it's like a last ditch effort. Because if you think about it from a survival standpoint, if we had to eat every 3-4 hours, all those years ago, we probably wouldn't survive as a species, because there was times where we didn't eat for days, and so, like, because of that, the ketones are there. You start to produce ketones. Now you're born in ketosis. Every baby is born in ketosis, and even though they're breastfeeding and the breast milk has sugar in it, it's very ketogenic, and these kids are like in ketosis. It's one of those things that we're born into it. So that's one of the reasons why it tells me that's a very natural diet. The other thing is, modern science has always thought that, you know, if we don't, because of our reliance on glucose, which our bodies need glucose, our brains need glucose, um, we used to think that if you didn't have enough glucose after a certain amount of days, you would just die. And so there was this guy in the 50s who tested that, and that would never be approved by the Ethics Review Board now. But he did a study where he had these people. He had, I think it started with one patient. He had this guy fast for 7 days. And what ended up happening was, over time, his blood sugar dropped and he started to produce ketones. And he realized that this may be. He didn't really know what it meant at the time. And then they started to learn more about diabetes, and unfortunately, because type 1 diabetes is no insulin, what ends up happening is when you're a type 1 diabetic, you don't create insulin. And what happens is there's something that can happen called ketoacidosis, which is basically uncontrolled ketone production coupled with really high blood sugar. So your body is your blood sugar is going through the roof because your cells need the sugar, but the insulin's not there to take it into the cells. So your body keeps making more and more sugar. Well, meantime, there's no sugar getting into the cells, so your body also thinks that you're starving, so it creates ketones. And these ketones are super high in a type 1 diabetic, and that's when you can actually die from that. So at the beginning, they used to think that ketones were like a byproduct of this disease. So they didn't really start to see the benefits of it for a long time. But that's my long-winded intro to it. Your typical ketogenic diet nowadays, because it's not like your therapeutic diets, is going to be about 75% of your calories coming from fat, and about 20% of your calories coming from protein, and then another 5% coming from carbohydrate. And it's not going to be from starchy carbs. It's going to be from non-insulinogenic, non-glucogenic carbs, which means carbs that don't really raise your insulin or your glucose. So it's going to be leafy greens and all the vegetables that you probably didn't like growing up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And by the way, you don't really need those vegetables, because I'm someone who doesn't even eat any vegetables, and that's a whole other story for a whole other podcast. Because my family, for the most part, we don't really eat vegetables. We eat mostly a meat-based diet. The science is there, and it's just like from a gut standpoint. I will say, if you're the type of person who has gut issues, and you've struggled with gut issues, I would recommend more of my type of diet that I do, which is it's ketogenic, but it's more meat, because in diets like that, where it comes to like gut health and autoimmune issues that come from your body attacking itself, is usually from your body is facing some outward threat, which is usually like a chemical coming from plants. And elimination is the most important thing you can do, is eliminate as many things as possible. And it's really no better elimination diet than just eating meat. But if you're a person that has issues like, or you have a history of epilepsy in your family, or Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, or even traumatic brain injury, then I would say like a higher fat ketogenic diet, because my version is higher protein, the one that I eat now. But if you have like any of those brain issues, you would want a more higher fat ketogenic diet with all those veggies if you want. But that's pretty much a ketogenic diet. It's a very low carb diet. It was made popular by Atkins because they weren't really focusing on ketone production. They just knew that carbs make you obese, and sugar is bad, and so they just said just eliminate that. And then the induction phase, which is that first phase of the Atkins diet, is really like a strict ketogenic diet, and then you start to see like what you can include back in. Well, there's no that part of the diet never comes back with a regular ketogenic diet. You don't start adding things back in. I mean, if you're an athlete, you may need some more carbohydrate, but for the most part, you just kind of always keep it low like that. So I hope that wasn't too long-winded. It feels weird to be talking to you about this, but
I'm glad that you did. And it's funny. Every time we talk about anything to do with diet on this podcast, I can immediately hear people typing their comments away and lighting their torches and getting ready to go to battle, because it is something that is so controversial. Everybody in every single diet has something that they can point to that'll say, well, this is the right one for you, this is right. And so what I'd encourage people to do is I'll say it like this. Okay, at the start of the year, I actually did, for about a month of this year, I did the ketogenic diet. And I got a lot of knowledge about it, and I jumped in, absolutely lost about 5 kilograms within a month, and was really seeing great results there. But the difference between a person like me and a person like Danny is, I feel like I had knowledge, you have the wisdom, because like I did my research, right? But then I just jumped into it. But you obviously have done so much more research. You know everything that there is to know about the ketogenic diet. And so even like a few days ago, I actually emailed you, as you know, and said, look, when I was on the ketogenic diet, I was seeing great results, but I was still feeling a little bit tired. Can you give me some tips? And you immediately got back to me with like this massive paragraph of all these amazing tips for basically, oh, this is what you're doing wrong here, this is what you're doing right here. So what I'd encourage people to do is to really spend your time doing the research. Maybe start listening to a podcast like yours, the ketogenic athlete, where you're going to get that good information. And if you're going to do it to the best of your abilities, with the best research, with the best information possible, so that you're giving it the best chance of having good success with that. Because something that I don't like is, no matter what diet it is, I feel like you can get great results if you're on a vegan diet. You can get great results on a ketogenic diet, high meat, low meat, high vegetables. But the thing that always creates the side of people who are like angry that this is a diet and you shouldn't be doing this and you shouldn't be doing that, is a lot of it is just people who have tried the diet but they didn't do it properly, and so they didn't get the results. So yeah. I'd encourage people to really research it if you're going to try it, and then give it your best shot possible. I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yes. Well, first of all, I just want to say that I think it's so funny because, like, okay, in my history online, my wife and I are very similar in the sense that we kind of share everything about our lives. We don't really care. We're just like open books, and so we talk about how we're anarchists, we're peaceful parents. We don't want our kids to be in school. We want them to do whatever they want. We're just all these controversial things that we do. But we talk about the fact that we don't eat vegetables, and people lose their minds, and I don't know what it is about nutrition that gets people, like, they should say, religion, politics, and nutrition, because like that one is like, I don't know why people. I think that the most important thing for me, just to make sure that if I want to just talk about something with people, is I want to just try to make sure that I'm being as descriptive as possible and not being prescriptive. And that's something that Brian is big on too, is like, look, this is what works for us. It's my body. Please leave me alone. Like let me enjoy my whatever I'm eating. But I think like with any diet, especially with the ketogenic diet, because with the ketogenic diet, you're actually like completely changing the way your body processes fuel. You want to give any diet, I think, unless it's like dire things are happening to you that you're like your health is failing. Um, you want to give it like 3 months or so, like 2 to 3 months, because and I always try to like set up people's expectations, because I think like what happens is like a coworker will see that I'm doing the diet, for instance, and then they'll be like, that's crazy. And then like 6 months later, they're like, well, that's not so crazy. And then like a year later, they're like, how do you do it? I want to do it. I want to start tomorrow. So like I'm like, okay, well, you want to try to set people's expectations, because you're not going to feel good at first. You're
Mm-hmm.
probably going to feel dizzy. You're probably going to feel weak. You're going to feel weak in the gym. It's going to look like you lost muscle, because basically your muscles store all this glycogen, and when you get rid of your glycogen stores, it's going to look like your arms shrank, and especially for a guy, that's like the end of the world. So, this is what you can do to combat that. This is what you can do to combat that. But at the end of the day, it's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to be okay with it or not okay with it. So I think that setting up expectations, number one. Number two, unfortunately, like we become part of these groups, and we start to see like people that have lost 100 pounds, and then we try to compare ourselves. I think that you should never compare yourself to someone else, whether it's like this person's ketones, because that's the other thing that people like to share their ketone readings, like as if that's something good in and of itself, and like all of us are like these like very individualized organisms with all these different factors happening at the same time that combine into that ketone reading or this. And people are like, I've been on this diet for like 2 weeks and I've only lost 4 pounds, and this person's lost 20 pounds. I'm here thinking to myself, that's a pretty decent clip, 2 pounds a week. The slower you lose it, the better anyway. So I think that's just like with anything else. I think it goes really well with Stoicism, is really to manage your expectations. Okay, why are you doing this diet? Well, I want to lose weight. Okay, so why don't you do another diet to lose weight? I mean, what is it about this diet that makes you want to lose the weight? And if you start to really think about your why, then I think that will help you understand, or just be able to deal with, when things don't go your way. And it's not even like from a health standpoint, it's not even from a well-being. You feel good, you're performing better, but your scale weight is not moving. That to me doesn't seem like a cause for concern, especially if this is something that it's going to be a lifestyle for you. So, yeah, I'm just rambling now.
No, it's good, and I think it's really important for people to hear that, and I want to reiterate that you need to really question yourself, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier. Have the wisdom instead of just the knowledge. You can have the knowledge and just start it, but wisdom is also knowing, okay, why are you doing this? Like, what is the purpose, and how are you expecting that it's going to impact you? And so I appreciate that, and I mean, this is something that's close to me as well, because I've just gotten into the fitness industry as a personal trainer, and this is something that I'm really passionate about, is telling people, okay, so you want to lose weight, or you want to get better, greater energy, or you want to change your body composition. Okay, why? What is the purpose? Is it because you hate your body and you don't want to be, and you're not happy right now? If it is, stop. Go eat what you want. Go do what you want, because that's the wrong mindset to be getting into this with.
So
Let's focus on the mindset of why you're approaching your health like this, and then move from there. I just think that's so important to start with. And we've gone almost an hour now, so I want to be mindful of your time.
I'm all yours, man. I'm all
Okay.
yours until you're done. I'm done when you're done.
All right, 6 hours later, let's see if you're still saying that. But now, for those who haven't seen Danny, he's absolutely ripped, right? Yeah, you're obviously a person. You've talked about your bodybuilding and everything. We're talking about health. We're talking about diet. Maybe let's talk a little bit about exercise. For those people out there who are sort of wondering about their health right now. They're thinking, well, maybe I should do something about it, but they just don't have that motivation. They just haven't started it yet. What would you tell somebody to maybe give them some advice for where they can start with their health, where they can start and maybe snowball into making better decisions all the time?
Well, I will first say that, like, if you're practicing like gratitude in the morning, really start to think about all of your physical traits that you possess that maybe other people don't have. And so you have two functioning legs, you have two functioning hands. Maybe you don't have one hand, but you have one. You know, that to me, I can't tell you how many times, Simon, like, especially on a Monday. I don't know what it is on a Monday morning. I think honestly, I think this morning that was one of my three things that I wrote down that I was grateful for. When you start a new week and you realize that you have another opportunity to push your body. You have this body that you can work, and you can, like, get stronger and challenge yourself in new ways. I think it really helps just get you in that mindset to, like, do something. And now that you're in the mindset to do something, now this is back to, like, who are you and what do you love? If you're not a weightlifter, don't try to make yourself be a weightlifter. Like, you don't have to lift weights. Obviously, any type of resistance and doing things that are going to put more than just your body weight is going to help with your bones and a bunch of other stuff. But if you like, trying to think what type of, I have no idea. My cultural Australian things that see here, there's something called Zumba, which is like, it's like a Latin dance class. If you like Zumba, do Zumba. If you like yoga, do yoga. And guess what? If you don't like yoga in a year, stop doing yoga and find something else immediately. The key is to always do something. Like, for me, I've always loved trying new things. So I'm like, I've done Brazilian, capoeira, which is like a Brazilian, it's not really a martial art. It looks more like a dance. It's like acrobatics. I've done jiu-jitsu. I've done Muay Thai. Of course, I played college football. I competed in powerlifting, and now I'm competing in indoor rowing. Like, all of these things, like, there's all these new things that you can challenge yourself. And, like, once you've done a few of them, like, let's say you ran your first half marathon, or you did your first sprint triathlon, you remember where you were in the beginning, and you remember what it felt like at the end when you went so far. And when you do more things like that, your confidence grows, and you kind of want that process. You're like, I want to be able to do that again. I want to be able to say, so yeah, I'm going to try this curling. I'm going to try curling this year. And I'm going to do the little thing on the ice with the guys, like, whatever. I always say, for me, like, I'm going to be the best shuffleboard player at 90 years old in the world. Like, if there's a competition, because for me, it's also like, I like competing, so that unfortunately I can never get away from. But find something that you love. Of course, start off with the fact that you have the ability to do something physical. That's awesome, like, because exercise brings so many benefits. But it's also, it's almost like when Marcus Aurelius talks about how when people act a certain way, they're denying their nature. You're denying your nature if you are not using this body that was made to move and it was made to do all these things. So think of it, start from there, and then from there, like, find something that you love. Like, go hike like Simon does. I would love to, if I had mountains. I live in Florida. Like, the biggest mountains we have are like the trash dump, like, which, by the way, do you guys burn your trash in Australia?
I don't think so. I think we just have landfills.
Okay, because I know that in some countries they do, and I'm like thinking to myself, like, why can't we do that? That's just a random thing my wife and I were talking about, because we drove by this nasty one yesterday, and we're just like, why can't we just get rid of it? Anyways, we don't have any mountains, so, like, if we had mountains, we would go hiking.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and I think that's really important as well. I mean, I think it was Tim Ferriss who said, like, the best exercise to do is the one that you're most likely to do. And I mean, I could give everybody an example from my own life. Like, well, I think it's so important to not just get into fitness and say, okay, well, I guess I have to be lifting heavy weights, or I guess I have to be doing cardio, or I have to be doing this. For me, I love to run. That's just what I love to do. And so with when I've been, the recipient of personal training, when people have been training me, it's been a focus of I don't want to get huge and bulky. I don't want to look jacked. All I want to do is to make myself a better runner, improve my mobility, so that I can continue to run, because that's what I love to do. And so I would also encourage people to say, okay, what do I love to do? Just get out there and start doing it, and don't feel like you need to be a certain person, or look a certain way, or like a certain sport, or want to have a certain body. Just do what you like to do. And another example I want to give people is when I did my first cruise contract. I got it was the biggest, second biggest ship in the world. The next biggest ship was 1 foot longer. It was exactly the same. But I got on this ship, and there was a huge gym. And I said to myself, if I'm not a healthier person after 6 months of being on this ship, despite there being buffets everywhere, if I'm not a healthier person after this, then I have completely failed myself, because this is a great opportunity. And for the first probably about a month of the contract, I was going to the gym that was only for crew members, and it was on like deck -6 or something like that. And I
was there a light? Was there a functioning like a flickering light?
There wasn't a flickering light. That would have been amazing. I wish that was the case. But I was hiding down there because I wasn't confident with my body, and I had this view that, like, oh, everybody's going to think that it's funny that I'm in the massive gym. And then I realized one day, I was like, hang on, everybody else in the main gym of the ship is exactly the same as me. They're just trying to be better. They're just trying to be more healthy. And there are people in there who are a lot unhealthier than me. Why am I hiding down here on deck -6 when I could be up there, enjoying everything that the massive gym has to offer? And I know that nobody's going to laugh at me, because they're all the same as me. They're just trying to improve themselves. So I think it's important for people to realize that as well. Everybody is just trying to get better. And even if somebody does laugh at you from going to the gym, those people don't matter, because they're idiots. Don't give them time.
Can I add something?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I want to add something to that, especially for women, because I think that this happens a lot more often with women, because especially like, a lot of these gyms cater to the man. Look, we have 200-pound dumbbells. And so a woman might think that they're going to walk into this gym, and they're just going to be, it's going to be so intimidating. They don't know how to do a lot of the exercises. And, you look at someone like me who's like 225 pounds, I'm a little bit bigger. You're probably thinking to yourself, like, man, that's, I'm going to stay away from that guy, but like, I think I speak for a lot of people who are, well, think about it this way. Anybody who's good at something, they want to talk about it, like, and so like, don't be afraid to go up to someone that you see and you think that they're like, that they're like good at what they do or whatever, and talk to them. Because I can almost guarantee you that we would love to talk to you. Like, I would love to. I'm never going to be that guy. I've never done like an unsolicited tip to a guy or a girl. Unless it's like a young kid and I see him doing something really bad, I'm like, dude, if you keep doing that, you're gonna hurt yourself.
Yeah.
But like, I don't think there's anything wrong with going out of your way. I have a friend of mine, she's Canadian, and she has I forget the name of it, but it's basically it's a disease that basically and I hate that I'm forgetting, because I have lots of people that are affected by this, but it's basically where you carry like a lot of your weight like in your butt and your legs, and like, even no matter how skinny you get, like, because you have, I forget how it works, but so she, that was an issue for her, number one. And then number two, she just never had lifted. So imagine you're trying to lose weight, and you're for the first time lifting in your late 30s, late 40s, early 50s. You don't know how to. And she started to see the regulars that went to the gym, and they would see her progress, and they would come up to her and be like, wow, you're killing it, And I find that in a lot of places, whether it's CrossFit, we just had our friend Rachel, she's an Aussie, by the way. We had her on our podcast. She's a Keto Evangelist member, and she's also gotten into the Stoicism. And she commented on how she's never had to deal with anything, number one, about being a woman, whether it's something that's dominated by males, because she does strongman. Like, she was in the world's strongest woman competition.
Oh, wow.
or the fact that she's a woman, or the fact that she's quote unquote weaker, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like that has never been an issue. And I think that a lot of that comes from like what we're thinking in our minds, but I don't think a lot of that is true in real life, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like, what is it? I think it's Seneca who says that, or it might be Epictetus, who says like, you know, that, no, I think it's Seneca, or he says like, you know, our problems, like they're much worse in our heads. I forget the actual quote.
Mm-hmm.
You know the one I'm talking about?
I know that they do say something similar to that. Uh, okay. I'll give you another quote that could definitely. It's from Mark Twain. I think he said, I'm an old man who's known many troubles, most of which never happened."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Yeah,
some of them came true or something like that, right? Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah. It's the same thing. Like, you know, we're in our minds, like we think these things, and honestly, I think you should be really happy if the main thing keeping you from joining a gym or from doing something active is your fear of what someone else might think or something like that, because that is totally probably false, and it means that everything else in your control is okay, and you can actually do it. So I just wanted to add that because I think it's important, because people get frozen, and then all of a sudden 3 months have passed and they still haven't done what they wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. No, I love that. I appreciate you sharing that. And, I just really wanted to talk about that because I think that so many people have these roadblocks in their mind that are really stopping them from taking that first step to improve their health. And, as much as I wanted to talk about Stoicism in this podcast, I also wanted to get your opinions on health and fitness and allow you to talk to people in this kind of way and encourage them to take control of their health because it's so important. And I always say that when you have a healthy mind, you have a healthy body, and the same, if you have a healthy body, you'll have a healthy mind. If you're studying philosophy, absolutely should be taking your health very seriously, and it will only make your study of philosophy better. And so I just want to encourage people to really take it more seriously. Hopefully this episode will help them to think about that as well. And I want to be respectful of your time, and I think that we've absolutely talked about some great stuff in this interview, and maybe we'll save the other conversations for another interview down the line. I'd love to have you back. Uh,
oh,
but
I'd love to be back, man.
yeah, anytime, anytime. And I want to give you an opportunity to share with people if there's anything else that you wanted to tell them. And also, if there's any way that they can follow you, tell them about the podcast, how they can get there, and just how people can reach out to you.
So the podcast is The Ketogenic Athlete, and it's on iTunes or your favorite podcast hosting app. I also have my Instagram and Facebook, which is Keto Counterculture, because a lot of this is definitely against the culture. I also have fatfueled.family is our blog that will be officially live on May 1st, and that brings together my wife, Fat Fueled Mom, my kids, Fat Fueled Kids, and that's where we have on Facebook and Instagram, like we show like all the food that they eat and the exercises that they do, and my just continuing on with that that autonomy thing is we don't film them or do anything like that unless we have their permission. My 7-year-old is a lot like me, who's like, hey, film this for Fat Fueled Kids. I want to do a workout, So we bring all three of those presences under one roof with the Fat Fueled family. And then the last thing is there's Keto Evangelist Unlimited, ketoevangelistunlimited.com, which is kind of like our one-stop shop where we combine all of this stuff. So we have like the 5 pillars of health. We have fitness, nutrition, mindset, stress management, and I'm missing one, community. So all of those things, we bring all of those things together. We have articles, we have workout plans, we have meal plans, lots of mindset articles. A lot of my, whenever I'm going through something tough, I do like kind of what I got that from the obstacles away. This is bigger than you, and I start to think about how can I help other people go through this. Write an article, and I'll share that on the website. So people love that website because, and also the Facebook group, because it's just like it's more about diet. It's more than just diet. It's the holistic thing. It's exactly what you're talking about. So that's pretty much all the stuff I do and where you can find me.
Yeah, awesome. I appreciate that. So everybody, I'll include all the links to these pages in the show notes, and you can go there. But Danny, again, I just want to thank you so much. It's always great to talk. We'll have to have you back again. I'll talk to you next time.
Talk to you soon, man.
All right, so there you go, my interview with Danny Vega. I really hope that you guys got a lot out of that interview, because there was so many great pieces of wisdom that he was sharing. And, I think that it was actually really great to move away from Stoicism for a while just to talk about health, because as we said, Stoicism, if you're practicing Stoicism, if you're practicing philosophy, this should go into every single area of your life, and you should be wanting to improve yourself in every single area. So I really hope that you guys all took some great advice there on the health and fitness side of things. But anyway, again, I hope that you enjoyed the interview, and do let me know on the Facebook group if there's anyone who you'd like to hear on the podcast, then I'd love to have them on. And I'll talk to you next time, but until then, I hope that this episode has helped you on your rise to the good life. Ciao. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Practical Stoic Podcast. I hope that you've gotten a lot of value out of it, and I hope that it helps you to live a better life. If you have enjoyed the podcast, then don't forget to subscribe so that you'll be the first to know when there are new episodes. If you really love the podcast, then I would appreciate a positive review, whether that's on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever else you listen. Don't forget that if you're interested in one-on-one Stoic coaching, then you can head to risetothegoodlife.com/coaching to book your first free session today.